Are you truly aware of what happens to your feline companion when they consume wet food every single day? Many pet parents assume it is simply a more flavorful choice. However, what occurs within their biological systems is something the vast majority of people never consider. It alters their organ efficiency, their daily mood, and even the way they interact with you at home. What begins to unfold might permanently shift your perspective on feline nutrition. Here is the transformation that starts from day 1. 1. Their internal systems finally receive the essential hydration they require. Have you ever questioned why your cat seems so indifferent to their water fountain? It is not a matter of being difficult or unmotivated. It is pure evolutionary biology. Cats developed as specialized predators in arid climates. Their biological ancestors obtained nearly all their liquid intake from the prey they hunted. Their internal thirst signal is naturally suppressed because their bodies were never intended to rely on supplemental drinking. That is how they flourished in the wild. But here is the critical issue. Most domestic cats consume dry kibble, which provides only about 10% moisture content. Compare that to canned wet food, which typically ranges between 75% and 80%. That is almost the identical moisture ratio found in a natural mouse or small bird. Consequently, when you transition to daily wet feeding, a rapid shift occurs. Their cellular hydration levels climb. Their kidneys are no longer forced to work excessively to filter out highly concentrated metabolic waste. Their urine becomes diluted, which drastically minimizes the threat of mineral crystals and painful urinary obstructions. This is one of the most frequent medical emergencies for cats, particularly for males. A clinical study featured in the Journal of Feline Medicine and Surgery concluded that cats on wet diets produce a much higher volume of urine with a lower concentration, which is exactly what a functional urinary tract requires. Your cat will not suddenly stop drinking entirely. However, their body finally moves out of a state of chronic dehydration. And truthfully, this foundational change is what allows every other benefit on this list to happen. But remain with me until the final point, because there is a specific side to daily wet feeding that can silently fail if you are not being careful. 2. Their body composition shifts in a manner you would not anticipate. Why do so many house cats struggle with obesity even when their owners are strictly monitoring their portions? It is not because cats are inherently inactive, it is because of the chemical makeup of the bowl. Dry food is often loaded with starch and carbohydrates. Certain varieties contain 40% or even more, and cats, being obligate carnivores, possess almost no physiological need for those sugars. Their metabolism is not designed to utilize carbs for energy, so the bulk of it is simply converted into fat stores. It is not a lack of activity, it is a biological design flaw in the diet. When you move to a daily wet food regimen, the metabolic equation is rewritten. Wet food is naturally richer in protein, higher in moisture, and significantly lower in sugar and starch. That specific balance achieves something simple yet incredibly effective. It allows your cat to feel truly full on fewer total calories without you needing to calculate every single gram. Research from the Waltham Centre for Pet Nutrition established that cats provided with wet food were far more likely to sustain a lean, healthy muscle mass compared to those on dry-only diets, even when they had constant access to food. That is because animal protein triggers a much stronger feeling of fullness than carbohydrates ever can. Your cat actually experiences satisfaction instead of being in a perpetual state of searching for more snacks. So, if your cat has been struggling with weight gain and nothing seems to work, the problem might not be the quantity you are serving, it might be the actual composition of the meal. And if this is changing how you view your cat's health, take a brief moment to hit like and subscribe. It really helps us reach more dedicated owners who want the best for their feline friends, not just the most convenient option. 3. Their fur quality reveals the truth before any other sign. Have you noticed how some cats possess that incredibly soft, radiant coat that looks perfectly healthy, while others feel coarse and brittle, regardless of how often you groom them? What if that had almost nothing to do with external brushing? Your cat's coat is one of the most transparent indicators of their internal physiological health. When their nutrition is suboptimal, the fur is the first place it shows. Dull textures, constant shedding, and dry skin are not just cosmetic issues. They are biological distress signals. Wet food is inherently dense in animal-based proteins and essential fatty acids. These are the two primary building blocks that healthy skin and glossy fur rely on most. Dry kibble, even the premium versions, undergoes high heat processing that destroys many of those sensitive nutrients before they ever reach your cat's digestive tract. When you switch to a daily wet diet, most guardians start seeing a visible change in the coat within just a few weeks. The fur becomes notably softer, the shedding cycles normalize, and that oily or dusty texture some cats develop starts to fade away. It is one of the first tangible proofs that their internal organs are improving. Research published in the Journal of Nutritional Science demonstrated that cats on high-protein, moisture-rich diets showed significantly better coat quality and skin elasticity compared to those on dry food alternatives. The body stops hoarding nutrients for basic survival and starts distributing them to the surface. So, if you have experimented with every brush and every vitamin supplement and the coat still looks lackluster, the solution might already be waiting in the wet food section. 4. Their psychological behavior regarding food changes entirely. Does your cat begin screaming the moment you move toward the kitchen area? Do they swallow their meals so fast it seems like they are worried someone will take it? Most people assume this is just a personality trait. But what if your cat is not actually greedy? What if they are simply never feeling biologically satisfied? Cats that rely on dry food frequently develop these frantic eating patterns. And it is not because they love eating more than others. It is because kibble fails to send the correct satiety signals to their nervous system. The high-carb, low-moisture pellets digest too quickly and leave them feeling physiologically empty again in a matter of hours. Consequently, they beg, they wander, they wake you up in the middle of the night because their brain is telling them that a vital nutrient is missing. When you introduce daily wet food, that frustrating cycle begins to dissolve. The higher protein levels activate a real satiety response in the brain. The extra moisture adds physical volume to the portion, which stretches the stomach wall just enough to trigger the I am full hormones. A study in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior actually validated this. Cats fed protein-dense wet diets showed a marked reduction in food-seeking behaviors and were far less likely to exhibit signs of stress or frustration between their scheduled meals. Your cat eats, feels content, and actually walks away from the bowl. Now, to be completely fair, not all obsessive eating is caused by food type alone. Some cats develop rapid eating as a learned habit from their past or in homes with multiple pets. In those specific cases, wet food provides the foundation, but using a slow feeder or a food puzzle can make a massive difference. It forces them to slow down and engages their predatory hunting instincts, which is exactly how their minds were designed to function. Once both the nutrition and the delivery method are aligned, the change is impossible to ignore. Cats that feel consistently full become much calmer during the day. The food guarding stops, the desperation disappears. Feeding time goes from a chaotic event to a peaceful routine. 5. The specific hazard that most owners completely overlook. So, if wet food provides all these benefits, why would there be any risk at all? This is the detail I mentioned at the start, the one that can quietly cause trouble if you are not being vigilant. Most owners simply open the tin, put it in the dish, and go about their day. That seems logical, doesn't it? But wet food does not have the same stability as kibble. Dry food can sit out for hours without changing much. Wet food cannot do that. The second it reaches room temperature, various bacteria begin to replicate rapidly. Depending on the climate of your home, that safe window can be as short as 60 to 90 minutes. Cats that prefer to graze on small bites throughout the day are at the highest risk. If your cat likes to take a few bites and return later, that second attempt might no longer be safe. The meal might look identical to when you served it. It might even smell acceptable to you. But dangerous bacterial growth is often invisible. The golden rule is quite simple. Never leave wet food out for longer than 2 hours. If your cat has not finished the portion by that time, you must discard it. Furthermore, any remaining food in the can should be sealed and put in the refrigerator immediately. Even then, it should be consumed within 48 hours to ensure safety. One more detail many people miss is that serving chilled food directly from the fridge is not ideal. Cats are instinctively drawn to food that is close to their own body temperature because it mimics the heat of fresh prey. A few seconds in the microwave or adding a tiny bit of warm water brings it to the ideal range and makes it significantly more appetizing. This is certainly not a reason to avoid wet feeding. Everything we have discussed in this video remains true. However, the difference between wet food being a health boost or a hidden problem comes down to how you manage it after the can is opened. Handle that correctly, and you are providing your cat with exactly what their biology was intended to thrive on.